Okay, we're going to get started here. Thank you guys for joining the call tonight, specifically this topic, mastering your inner critic. And then I've added to that with the 3 R's, really some strategies for personal growth, personal and professional growth. This is something I've been coaching for about 6 years. This is a topic that continues to bubble up in a lot of my coaching calls and conversations. And I've worked with studying this particular topic and trying to help and support the clients, as well as, to be candid with you, myself. You know, we all, I think, struggle with what's going on with that inner voice inside our heads and how we can be better at minimizing it. We really probably can't turn it down all the way, but if we minimize it, what can we do to really support ourselves to make progress on our health and wellness goals? Real quick disclaimer, this presentation is for educational and informational purposes only and solely as a self-help tool for your own use. I'm not providing medical, psychological, or nutritional therapy or advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your own medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and or mental health provider about your specific health situations. For my full disclaimer, feel free to go to coachmikethomas.com. This is me. I'm a health coach. There's a QR code on the screen if you're watching this online, and there'll also be a link in the description of this video. I basically help busy professionals that struggle with low energy, high stress, and chronic pain. If you want to learn more about me, feel free to look that information up in the description. And this topic itself, again, introduction to the inner critic. I want to use this example of Rose that you see on the screen and her struggles at the gym. And the story with Rose is she had a health coach. She didn't have a health coach. Basically, she got motivated and she really wanted to start working out. She wanted to lose weight. She wanted to gain muscle. She wanted more toned body. She wanted higher energy. She wanted to sleep better at night. And so she made a plan to start going to her gym. I'm making this up, by the way, but this is a common theme. She wanted to start going to her gym on a consistent basis. And so sure enough, 3 or 4 days a week, she would go to her gym and start working out. And sure enough, about 3 or 4 weeks into it, she started hearing that voice. And that voice was saying things like, this isn't going to do any good. You've tried this in the past. And that inner voice would say things like, you know, those other people that are here working out with you, they're looking at your body and they're like, this girl's pathetic or what have you, right? So this is a typical thing that happens to Rose. It happens to all of us in the capacity as we're trying to make changes in our lives, right? So who does that story on this call, who does that resonate with? Maybe tell me a story, tell us an experience where your inner critic affected your decisions in trying to make some change.
Well, definitely me. And you definitely described me going to the gym and, you know, looking at all the fit people and thinking, what the heck am I doing here? I can't do this. And I can't sometimes, but sometimes I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that resonates with you as well?
Absolutely.
And the experience of the gym specifically, right?
Well, yeah. And one time at the gym, I was completely by myself at 11 p.m. at night. And I decided I was going to try something new because nobody was around. And I tried this one machine that was not used for what I wanted to use it for. Mm-hmm. And I pulled the whole thing down on top of me.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't get up. So yeah. I ended up having to call the fire department to come and help me get up. So, you know, there's a little bit of truth to the fear, but I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Anybody else an experience where you felt like your inner critic was affecting your decisions, your choice, and your progress?
Oh, this Karen, definitely. And not just with the gym, but I mean, it can scream at me when I'm walking through a mall, when I'm trying to make a decision on just even life decisions that, you know, you're really not smart enough to make this decision. You need to, you know, so yeah. So I fight with that a lot.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Very much resonates with probably all of us to a certain degree. So just understanding the inner critic, or understanding what I call on this slide, the problem itself. Thank you both, Karen and Beverly, for sharing those stories. So first of all, the detrimental effect of an unchecked inner critic. The inner critic in general, and it's the term I'm using, but there's in some of the books, they call it the resistance, the gremlin, the inner voice. I think we all kind of know those thoughts that come up that resonate with us in this specific topic. If it's unchecked, it can go pretty rampant and get pretty bad, right? So the challenge though is you really, again, this is all my opinion based on what I'm reading and coaching clients on an ongoing basis, is you really don't want to confront it or fight it, right? If you confront it, if you fight it, it actually gets louder and stronger. That's just the way this dynamic of this funky thing works, right? So the challenge is how do we navigate through having this and still make progress in our goals? Because if you say, well, I'm not going to have that and I'm going to fight it or what have you, it gets stronger, right? So big picture, that's where the challenges come. So based on, again, my studying, my reading, going back and forth with many clients, I've come up with, and I'm sure this is probably somewhere else, but I've come up with 3 things, and they're called the 3 R's, to help you navigate through that inner critic or that inner voice that makes it that much more difficult to make change, to make progress in the capacity of health and wellness, or shopping at the mall, or building a great relationship, all those things that we want to do in our lives. The 3 R's stand for recognize, reframe, and redirect, right? And I'm going to go through each one of those for you guys. So the first one is recognize. I think all of the R's are important. However, if you don't do the first one, the second one and the third one don't really matter so much, right? Have you ever heard the term, you don't know what you don't know?
Mhm.
The reason I have an onion on this slide is because a lot of times that negative inner critic's voice is being said, and it's impacting us, but we're not really noticing it, on a conscious level. It's affecting us on a subconscious level, right? Those things are happening just below the surface typically, and we can reflect. And if we have built that awareness to recognize them, we can catch them. And that's the thing that I really want to impress upon you, to recognize or build that awareness of, where are my thoughts right now? And there's many ways that we can do that. And I'll talk about some of those in general in just a minute. But if we don't recognize the voice, and some of you could be saying, well, of course I recognize the voice, but to the level of intensity of what it's specifically saying when it happens is huge, right? Because when you recognize it, then you're in a place where I can actually do something differently with my thoughts without fighting with this negative voice, right? So what kind of negative thoughts frequently occur in your mind? I think, Karen, you gave us some good examples. Anybody else that comes to mind of, this is what I'm hearing when I'm trying to do X in my life?
Just like, what makes you think you can do this? You can't do this. I mean, just
Okay. Yeah.
like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Kind of stuff,
Kind
you
of
know?
belittling, right?
Yeah. Idiot comes to mind.
Sure.
Uh, Being here with the goose or the geese, it's like, you ain't got the sense God gave a goose.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think also some things go through my head
Mhm.
is, well, you've never been successful before at this. So
Right.
what makes you think you're going to now?
Yeah. Great example. Exactly. All
Yeah.
right. So mindful and meditation, this is a way that we can work to be more aware. And I'm going to kind of ramble for a minute here. But if we want to recognize it in the moment when it happens, the first thing is it's mindful observation of our thoughts without judgment, right? So it's really simple. For great example, Kimberly, for you to say, well, I've never done this in the past. And then you catch yourself saying that and then go, damn it, I'm not supposed to say that. Man, I'm not good at this either, right? We can really cascade this process. But the second R is reframing, right? So as we're going through the process and recognizing that thought or those thoughts that are not helping us and serving us, it's important to just step back and without judgment say, oh, wow, look what I'm noticing, right? I'm noticing that when I try to do such and such, or when I'm, 3 weeks into working out the gym, or what have you, I'm
Mhm.
noticing that this voice is coming up. Again, just to build the process of noticing. Another example is checking in with yourself. Every day before you sit down to have lunch, you literally sit down and just take a moment and you say, where am I at? Where are my emotions? What's going on for my day? Just to be aware and bring that to the front of your mind, right? Meditation is another way you can do it as well. You can literally spend some time breathing in and out for 10 minutes in the morning, just relaxing and just being still and just thinking about where your thoughts are, where your emotions are. And that builds that muscle to have more awareness to support yourself in your life. So that we got to have the awareness, and we got to catch ourselves if we want to make progress on number 2, which is reframing, right? So reframing is when you have that thought of, I've been going to, like Rose, we're going to use her as an example. I've been going to the gym for 3 weeks. And you know what I noticed is when I go to the gym for 3 weeks, that this voice starts to echo in my head. Let me take a moment and step back and say, that's kind of part of the process. We all as human beings experience this voice. And let me just acknowledge that. Let me reframe it and say, I'm going to feel that, I'm going to hear this voice from time to time. And that's part of the process. I don't ever expect to go to the gym for 1 solid year and want to be at the gym 100% of the time and feel great about it 100% of the time. There'll be a lot of positivity there. But if you reframe it and knowing that this is pretty normal to feel this way, even though it's not a good feeling, it's very normal for the human experience to feel this way, right? So who could maybe volunteer a negative thought for us to potentially reframe, setting up, here's the scenario and here's the negative thought. And it doesn't have to be one for yourself, but something like Rose's experience, etc. So
Mhm.
what's maybe a situation and a thought that comes in?
I'm too old and I'm too unfit.
What's the situation?
The situation is where I'm working out and
Mhm.
I'm trying to do something that I haven't done for 40 years,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
anyway, so that's it, I think.
Yeah. So you're working out and you're going to the gym and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm too old and I'm too unfit, right?
Or even
So,
at home. It doesn't even have to be the gym. It can be anywhere.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I want to get a specific situation because I really want
Okay.
us to be very clear about what's happening, right? So you want to be at home or do you want to be at the gym?
Let me try home because that's where I'm going to be most often.
Yeah, that sounds good. And what's the scenario where all of a sudden this thought will come up? What happens for you for this thought to come up?
Maybe when I'm getting up to try to do some dancing
There
or
we go.
something.
Perfect. Yeah, great scenario. Yeah, that's excellent. So you're getting up to you hear a great song, you're getting up to start to dance, and you're I don't know, you're feeling a point internally, I can't do this, I'm too old, I'm too weak, or what have you, right? Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to reframe this thought, right? Tell maybe who else on this call could say, how can we reframe that thought of I'm too old to help and support Bev in the process of getting up and trying to dance? What's a reframing thought? How can we reframe that thought? What do you guys think?
I need to keep moving so that I can um grow older and be able to move or have
Yeah,
mobility.
yeah, yeah. That's a great way of taking that. I can't do this to actually, let me reframe it as I can do this. And over the course of time, as I want to get stronger and more agile, more nimble, this is part of the process. And I'm going to move forward and do that because of it. Yeah. So really, really good example.
Mhm.
So it's recognizing, catching it. I call it catching it, having the awareness. Oh, wow, look at the chatter that's going on in my head right now. That's
Mhm.
another term that's used for it. And then reframing that thought, right? And the last thing is to redirect. And this is the key to not fighting it, right? So you redirect your thoughts because you do control them to a certain degree when you're intentional and you have this sense of awareness and conscious thought towards positive affirmations or something that brings you joy in your life, right? Or something that you're so grateful for in your life, right? So for Rose, who's working out at the gym, and she says, you know what, man, I'm trying to lift these weights right now, and I just don't feel stronger, and I can't do this. And usually by the week 4, when I try this stuff, sure enough, I quit. You know, I bail on it, right? And then she says, wait a minute, I know just from reading books or having a coach or talking to some of my friends that some of these thoughts are going to bubble up, and it's kind of normal for me to feel this way. And me doing this is actually going to reinforce what I want to do, which is to lose weight and be more toned and have more energy, etc. So this is kind of part of the process. So she's now recognized it. She's reframed it. What's an example of what she could do to replace this with a thought that brings her joy or gratitude? And you can make up anything you want, but tell me something she could think about instead of that negative thought.
Being able to move with her kids,
Tell me about that.
just being able to get out and move and play, and maybe not extensively, but maybe shoot some hoops or go for a walk or whatever, just to spend time.
Yeah, because that's an area, her children who she loves dearly, it's an area that brings her tremendous joy. It also could be forward thinking to say, you know, as my kids and then eventually having grandkids, I'm going to be in a place because of what I'm doing. The very different thought than what she thought, you know, 2 minutes prior when she caught herself with, I can't do this, especially when it comes to the 4th week. The 4th week always does me over, right? So really excellent way to redirect that thought. Any other thoughts of what we can do to redirect it to something of great gratitude or a positive affirmation or joy?
Maybe, okay, I'm going to commit to just doing, 1 push-up
Okay.
and then build on there. Just one thing, just focus on one time of doing it, and then maybe it'll grow from there.
Yeah, yeah. Really making something where I can do this, and then when I do it, I've got a win, even if it's a small win,
Right.
because it's just about progress, right? We continually focus with my clients on a day-to-day basis about this is not about perfection. You may be, you know, if your goal is to go from a 4 to a 10, 4 to an 8, you know, 1 out of 10, and you're a 4 in this particular thing, and you want to go to an 8. The first thing I want to do is I want to go from a 4 to a 4.1 or a 5, right? And so just something small, just to start building some momentum, which makes progress, which builds confidence in that process. So a great example of a way to redirect that thought versus stewing in that negativity, which of course is incredibly unproductive.
Yeah.
So it's recognize, reframe, and redirect. Which one of those 3 R's do you guys find the most challenging? We don't have to go into detail, but maybe everybody just share which one that they feel like this is going to be most challenging for me.
I think mine, Karen, is the reframing.
Reframing, okay.
Yeah.
Who else?
Probably reframing.
Okay, that's 2 reframing. Any other votes?
Mine's between the reframe and redirect.
Okay.
I feel like I can do one and then I get to the next and it's not there. So
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
I think recognize and redirect.
Recognizing and redirect, okay.
Yeah.
So we got 1 vote for recognize, 1 vote for redirect, quite a few votes for reframing. Okay, anybody else?
I do like Kimberly's redirect. I do really like the idea of the 1 push-up or the 1 little thing, and then, you know, building on that over time.
Yeah. No
Because
question.
that's doable right now. 1 little bitty thing, that's it. You know,
Yeah.
that's doable.
Absolutely. Okay, I wanted to bring up self-compassion because I think that's such an important part of this process. And I don't know if it was Karen, somebody a few minutes ago was literally saying the words that are going inside of her head. And, you know, it's very real for all of us to a certain extent at different times in our lives. Kristen Neff, who's on the screen here, and I'm going to have a link to a video description in the description of this video. She's amazing at, you know, basically self-compassion. She's got a workbook that I've gone through, et cetera. She really talks about one thing you can do when you think about what this voice is saying is just to have the awareness and to treat yourself as though you would treat a friend, right? Because as I'm coaching clients, I'm like, okay, so let's talk about that neighbor that's struggling with trying to eat plants as much as possible down the road. And you know, they're struggling. And every once in a while they're having the sweets, or, you know, they're having a few too many drinks or whatever. And of course, this is what the client's going through. What do you tell your friend that struggles with this? And right away, their body relaxes. It's about compassion. It's about care. It's about love. And really being in tune with that messaging that we give to ourselves, right? Without fighting with it. We have such a strong Western culture in the United States of just being tough on yourself. And this is how we're going to do good. This is how we're going to be successful in our lives. And the reality is, there's a reason why the inner critic comes up, because it has actually helped us to have high standards to be very productive members of society, right? So I'm going to work really hard on this test and get my A or pass the grade. I'm going to do really well on my job. I'm going to make a lot of money. Those aren't necessarily bad things, but when we carry it on and we have the mentality that this is going to be it and it's detrimental to our progress, then it's that much more difficult. A lot of times people will say, well, self-compassion is for wimps. And in reality, having self-compassion is so much self-kindness to help yourself and take care of yourself in the process, right? So I'll have that video, like I said, in the description of this video. The role of stress and anxiety in self-criticism is another one. So stress and anxiety magnify the inner critic's voice. So a way to turn it up is to experience distress or stress in your life, just because this is just naturally what happens in our lives in general anyway, right? So when we have that stress, that thing that normally wouldn't bother us actually makes it that much worse. So who can share maybe one thing they have found that kind of works for them to help minimize stress in their lives?
I think humor sometimes.
How so?
Well, I mean, even in the situation when, you know, when I'm saying, oh, I can't do this or whatever, sometimes I think if I sort of like step back and just kind of look at myself and say, okay, this is kind of funny. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, you might look a little bit funny right now, but you know what? It's kind of funny. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a sitcom. Watch a sitcom or something,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. That's a great way of reframing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, you might even look funny to other people, but there's also a little bit of, I think, respect when you can laugh at yourself,
Yeah.
you
Huge.
know?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Any other stress reduction techniques?
Yeah. If my mind is going crazy with stress and anxiety, I gotta move.
Okay.
The walking
Okay.
music is like I'm in another world, and it
Yeah.
definitely relief that I've gotten exercise out of that as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Great way to just move, whether that's exercising or walking. And then you said music is a nice escape for you as well.
yep.
What kind of music? Like, you mean like turn on the radio, or what's your go-to when you're kind of feeling anxious and you want to just zone out and just veg out and relax with some music?
Oh well, if I've got it's got to be upbeat music for sure.
Okay.
So, but my playlist on my phone,
There we go.
and put the AirPods in and
Yeah.
shut whatever comes up. It's got to be good if I downloaded it. So
There we go. Absolutely. A great example of having something to support yourself. So here's the bottom line, right? If somebody asks me as a health coach, so what do you do? You know, honestly, about 75 to 90% of my clients, depending on my client load, it's about this, right? Self-care. That particular person that I'm coaching has been caring for so many other things and people in their lives, but hasn't focused that attention and care on themselves, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, right?
Mhm.
And if I can help and support them by recognizing the obstacles that are in their way and the capacity to make change, really focusing on recognizing that self-care is probably the most selfless thing that you can do, because when you take care of you, just like the oxygen mask on the airplane, so many wonderful things can happen in your life. And a lot of folks come to me because what they're doing right now isn't working, right? They have low energy, they're high stress, they're not sleeping at night very well, they're not moving to the level they want to, they're not fueling their body with the foods that they want to fuel their bodies with. And when we really focus and extract out what's going on big picture here, and for them to embrace, self-care is the thing, and here's my ownership in this, a lot of traction happens in that capacity as well. And working on that, and then minimizing the inner voice, because you probably can never turn it down completely, but you can make it a lot less loud, i.e. a lot more quiet, to help you and support you with narrowing down the bottom line, which is incredibly important of self-care.
Mhm.
And I think, I just have a couple more slides and then we're done. So setting up healthy personal boundaries is also incredibly important, right? Clarity with your thoughts and your actions. So it's important of setting boundaries to protect one's mental space from negativity, right? So I jotted down a couple of examples I want to share with you, but before I do, what do you feel like is potentially a boundary that you can have with clarity, that you could have to help yourself moving forward in your wellness journey, right? A lot of times where there's things that are fuzzy, areas of gray, but if you're like, no, this is kind of a hard, fast boundary for me. When I do this, or when I think this, it helps me and supports me in the capacity to make better change in my life. What comes to mind for you guys as maybe some examples, some good boundaries?
For me, it is looking at relationships around me, friendships or
Yeah.
whatever. If there is someone that's a negative Nelly all the time,
Yeah.
I have to really limit myself of how much time I spend with them. And I mean, I've gone so far as to, if someone calls and they're like always crying and
Yeah.
negative, I've just said, hey, you know what, when you can kind of calm down a little bit, I'm just gonna hang up and let you get that all out, and
Right.
then when you're able to talk, let's do this again, because I just
Yeah.
can't do it right now. So
Yeah.
I know it may seem rude, but I just
Mhm.
have to have those boundaries.
Yeah. Well, you're protecting yourself, and you're also giving some clarity to the individual that you probably care about, right? Just to
Right.
let them know, hey, I'm here for you. However, this
Mhm.
isn't working for you. So two really positive things are having the clarity and then taking the action to communicate that to support yourself. So
Mhm.
any
Yeah.
other boundaries that come to mind for anybody?
Well, kind of uh, piggybacking on what Kimberly said, more so for me would be the boundary of not allowing somebody else to put me down.
Okay.
Not allowing somebody else to say, stop it, you can't do it, whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's where sometimes the rebellious child is a
Mhm.
positive thing
Yeah.
if you use it to good,
Yeah, of course.
because if you can say, stop, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. Just stop.
Yeah,
You know what?
definitely.
I mean, that sounds harsh too, but sometimes that's what it takes, I think, for
No,
me anyway.
absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another good example. Anybody else? Okay, I have some examples I want to share with you guys. And this is based on my own life as well as the lives of my clients and friends and stuff. So there's no really set person here, but a good boundary with regards to your own self-care is, hey, this is my hard fast when I'm going to bed, right? So 10 o'clock is my boundary, and trying to adhere to that the best of your ability. And I struggle with a night owl wife, and I am an early morning person. And so I think it's pretty clear now at 10 p.m. if I'm not in bed, I'm starting getting a little bit anxious because I really need to get to bed because I typically get up very early. So that's a good example of just an objective boundary to say, you know what, when I get to bed at this time, for me, it's usually around 10 p.m. That's helpful and supportive. Another one is a boundary for the inner voice, the inner critic, for social media, right? There's lots of data out there now that show that when you're on Facebook and, you know, Instagram and all this other stuff, seeing everybody else's amazing lives and comparing that to yourselves or what have you, you actually put yourself in a negative state typically, right? I mean, there's a lot of really wonderful things about social media, but one of the things that's not so great about it is a lot of times that people are on it, it actually brings them to a worse state, emotional state. So having a boundary to say, you know what, I'm gonna spend 15 minutes of my lunch to scroll through reels on Facebook, and that's going to be it for me for the day, versus spending 90 minutes at night after dinner scrolling through reels or what have you. Another boundary is a news fast, right? You literally do not watch the news. This is an example of something I have done for years.
Yep.
When Grace Ann and I got married, we really just said, you know what? This is we got married in 91. So this is in the mid 90s, and we decided we just didn't want to watch the news. We still know who the president is, and we know when there's a major thing going on. But that's an example of a way to say, I don't want to come away from that horrible stuff that's going on in my community and in the world. And I'm not saying we're going to be ostriches and put our heads in the sand. However, it's a great way to potentially help and support yourself.
Yeah.
The other boundary as an example, and this has come up a few times with some clients, and that is, you are going to have letdowns in your life. You're going to have setbacks. That's just reality, whether it's with your job, your wellness goals, right? And you're going to probably feel bad. And my goal here is not for us to not feel bad. But what if we said, you know what, I didn't get the promotion I wanted to, and I'm pretty upset about it. What if we said, you know what, it's Thursday, and I'm going to give myself until Monday morning to be in my pity party. And then after that, Monday, I'm flipping the switch because I'm done with this, right? So setting a clear boundary of working through what that challenge is that you have, right? So again, you didn't get the promotion at work, you had a setback with regards to your wellness goals. Yeah, you're going to naturally feel bad, and that's part of the process, and you don't want to fight that necessarily. But if you have a boundary that could help you to say, yeah, I'm gonna give myself the next couple of hours and kind of be in a bad mood. It sounds kind of silly, but when you have that boundary and you come on the other side of that, the chances of you really having some positive, productive thoughts to help you with positivity is significantly greater because you have a clear boundary on that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Cool. All right. So last thing I have before the final thank you slide, and that is, who would like to share maybe one small step that relates to just the big picture of what's going on with the inner critic, of what you feel like you can do based on the information of this presentation to help you and support you to minimize, turn down the inner critic, or what have you? What comes to mind as one small step?
For me, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I tend to not acknowledge any achievements.
Okay.
So I think, and which you've pointed that, you've made me aware of that. Thank you, Mike. But I think if I start acknowledging even the little ones, then that will maybe take some of the wind out of my inner critic sail.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Absolutely. It's a way to negate what the inner critic's saying just because you're focusing on what are you having as wins. Like Kimberly said a few minutes ago, I'm going to set a goal here of just having one push-up. And then you get the one push-up and you're like, you know what, I got to win there, or what have you. So yeah, that's a great example of being intentional, of recognizing the wins and what you're grateful for. Very good. Anybody else?
I think recognizing when your thoughts going the wrong way, and put it in the bud then, like just actually recognizing those thoughts. And sometimes they just keep going and you don't realize, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm really depressed, whatever. And if I would have caught that at the beginning and saw the signs of it.
Yeah, very good point. So catching it sooner than later before it really escalates. Any thoughts on how you feel like what you can do to try to catch it sooner than later, so it's not necessarily under the surface there?
For myself, there are certain Bible verses that I go to right away.
Yeah.
That is a reminder for me over and over that, you know, whatever I'm thinking is pure or lovely, or are those the thoughts I'm really thinking right now?
There you go.
And it's my choice to turn those around. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love the ownership in that statement. It's my choice. That's great.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Okay, maybe one more person to share what's one small step you feel like you can take to help you and support you with minimizing the inner critic to help you to make progress on your goals, wellness goals, or what have you.
I guess what you said earlier in the presentation, Michael, about the meditation and taking time to put things in the forefront of your mind and realize, what's going on in the background and just bringing it to the forefront.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
just being intentional about what's going on with your thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just like what both ladies just said, the self-talk, just changing the self-talk. I mean,
Yeah.
changing it to yes, you can,
Yeah.
maybe not yet, but yes, you will,
Yeah.
or you'll get closer. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, really recognizing the progress that you're making and acknowledging yourself in that process with affirmations. Yes, you can. Very powerful.
Mhm.
Well, very good. Listen, I really appreciate it. I hope this was helpful for you listening in live as well as watching the recording on YouTube, etc. And like I mentioned before, if you're interested in talking to me and possibly working with me as a health coach, my information is in the description of this video. And at that, we will call it a day. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Mike.
Mike.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we'll exit out here. God bless, guys. Take care.
You too.
Bye.